In the context of this book that they're putting together, they're talking about, it's basically about, it's called Digital Illusions, and it deals mostly with computer games, but it deals with all the different, the new ways that people are being encouraged to think, the new theater, basically. The theater's one of the continuing paradigms. And religion, and so the connection here is that religion is a form of theater.
Right.
It is very sensually engaging. A good ritual, a good Catholic Mass, right? It gets you on all levels.
You may have your causality inverted there, because in fact drama was always essentially ritual to begin with.
Absolutely.
So in fact theater is the form of church and not the other way around, I think.
Very good, very good. I absolutely
Well,
agree.
it's interesting because it takes off from Brenda Laurel's work in Computers as Theater.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take that back, then I gave a talk at the International Symposium on Electronic Arts, and one of the sections I entitled Computers as Ritual.
Mm-hmm.
All right, really just trying to extend that metaphor back to its root.
Right. And what did you say? What was the gist of what you said?
It's I don't know if there's any easy way to sum it up. That was the major piece that I wrote this year. So it was really an encapsulation of 4 years of work in one piece.
I think I may actually have it in the file. Luke, I think, gave it to me.
That's called Ontos Eros Nous Logos. That's the piece.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the piece I did at.
And talking about the role of ritual of religion
Right.
per se in culture, because it is the fundamental paradigm of any new culture.
Right.
It tells you who you are in relationship to the people,
The sacred is
to
that
the
which
earth.
ontologically founds the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And every decision that you make is informed by your worldview as informed by your religion.
Right.
They flow very organically. So we're coming into cyberspace, this whole new world view, this whole new construct. No.
It's not new, but go on. That's what I would argue, is that it's
okay.
not new at all.
Fire.
Well, cyberspace is very interesting in the sense that it is informed entirely by being, not by physics.
Okay.
It's informed by emotion rather than reason. When you enter that kind of realm, you're talking about really looking around the inside of yourself. You know, if people look in cyberspace and they see demons, well, really what they're seeing is their own reflection in the mirror. Okay? So there's no cyberspace that's not already in our heads. There's no thing in spirit that we see in there that we didn't bring in with us. So what I say, and
So what
people
Paul
thought
said about would be what you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Maybe
That's
Jesus
right.
who said that.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And people thought I was being flip when I said, as part of this talk that I was talking about, the talk at Isaiah, I said, cyberspace is the mirror held to the third eye. All right, in that, exactly. And so I think what you'll see is that bandwidth matters not as much as how imaginal, how evocative you can be. I mean, ritual itself, the best rituals I go to are not the Gardnerian rituals which go on for months and months with invocation of this, invocation of that, invocation. There's no, it is impossible to conceive in
Hinduism or Buddhism.
right, or yoga or anything else of body being distinct from mind. It cannot occur. Okay.
It generally occurs mostly in monotheistic patriarchal
Right.
religion. It's
Right.
one of the defining
Well,
features.
because you have to really deaden your body in order to be able to accept the concept of a unitary God.
Yes.
I mean, this is my own feeling on that.
Yeah, and also the disembodiment, the disattachment of that God out there.
That's right, exactly. God out there and not
Right.
at all present
Right.
here. So in rejecting immanence, you also fall into this trick that cyberspace is disembodiment. That's bullshit. All right? There, right in the camera.
Bravo.
It's bullshit. Okay. In fact, the most effective pieces of cyberspace, and I'll point to two. One is called Osmose. The other one's called Placeholder. All right? These two most effective pieces of VR embody yourself by putting your body in there too. Okay. Now, Osmose is it's unarguably the first piece of virtual art. All right. It was premiered this year in September at the Contemporary Art Institute in Montreal, and was
Brenda
the start.
was telling me about
yes,
this.
she was. She and I went into it within about 30 minutes of each other. And it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And the way you navigate through it is by breathing. All right. So you wear a small band across your chest, which measures your chest extension.
And it's like being in water. As you breathe, you rise. And as you
Well,
exhale,
Shar
you
Davies, the
fall.
artist from it, is a diver. She's a
Right.
she's a certified diver. So what she does is she took her own metaphor, but what was unexpected is having this as a mechanism causes you to basically couple with the environment in a way that your body, not just your mind, but your body is coupled to the effect of being in this immersive environment.
You really experience prana in a
Right.
really serious way.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I went into yogic breathing through the whole thing. I was having the time of my life. All right. And
Wait a minute, this is the dolphin thing.
no,
No.
it's cyberfin.
That's everything. Okay.
No, it's absolutely incredible, and what it brought home to me very clearly is the reason why this piece works is because it doesn't leave the body behind. It says the body too is sacred ground. All right, the body too is it's the receptacle and the vehicle for sacred being. You cannot contemplate, at least in this plane, you cannot contemplate sacred being without equally contemplating sacred body. They're one and the same. And so Shar didn't consciously attempt to articulate that specific thing. She consciously tried to evoke a feeling that she'd had many years ago, okay, in like 1973 or something, where she conceived of all of the forest that she was in as being inside of her and her being inside of it, so that she really lost the ego definition, which says that humanity ends at the skin.
Right. Okay. It's just an experience a lot of people take hallucinogenics to achieve.
Right.
Mysterium tremendum, as Ansel called it.
Yes, okay, I like that, mystery tremendum, okay. Or I mean, roughly an egoless state.
Yes.
Okay, right, so that would be what, darshan, I guess, right, something like that. So, the power of this piece really caused me to reflect on the fact that, in fact, cyberspace is not about disembodiment. Cyberspace is about an embodiment that is not necessarily what we're used to in this world, because this world is not infused with the same magic that we're capable of in cyberspace, or at least we don't believe we're capable of it here. It takes too much work. See, people, I essentially think that people are very lazy, and all we're doing with cyberspace is learning the ways of natural magic in a way that forces us to believe that it's happening as it's going on. Give you some examples. All right. What's the difference between email and telepathy?
Email you have to type.
Telepathy, you have to think really hard.
That's true.
Right? I mean,
email, you know it's going to get there.
Well, you believe it's going to get there unless you get a bounce, all right? And I would argue that for people who are in a high enough state of belief, mystical belief, all right, where the I am and the I will are synonymous with the doing of the act.
You trust your telepathy more.
Right. Well, I mean, I essentially think of, I mean, I've gotten channels from my friends in voicemail, right? They don't have to be physically present with me. They can leave a channel in voicemail for me, all right? And I didn't really know about that until I experienced it. I'm like, wow, because you can tell when you're getting a channel. And so, I mean, when I knew this, I was like, well, okay, clearly you can have a channel on a store and forward mechanism, all right? So I started thinking, well, what about a channel in an email? I don't know what. And I mean, we've all gotten these pieces of email from someone, and the hair rises on the back of your neck, and, you know, and you know what you're doing is you're receiving some form of information, some form of intelligence.
I've been in chat rooms where I was, notable story, I was on the AOL Religion and Ethics chat room one night, probably 9 months to a year ago.
Right.
23 people, you know, the usual number, the usual suspects.
Right.
And this guy showed up, and he typed in just a couple things, and I had that experience. It was just, hi, how are you, sort of, and there was a smell. There was a smell about this guy that was not right. And so I started asking just a few questions, and immediately got that he was a Christian ID person, which is the theology that supports the racist right. You know, basically, it was Aryan nation sort of boom. And there were several Jews present, and I immediately sent them instant messages saying, do you realize who's here? You know, what this guy stands for? And I outed him. I was out in front of everybody, finally, after a few people had, you know. And nobody else really got that, I don't think. The other Jews were pretty appalled. But they just sort of like chatted with him like, hail fellow, well met. And said, do you people understand what this man stands for? And he started, you know, kind of mouthing off, and they just sort of let him ride. And I was one of about 3 people who really, you know, took him to task. But it was a weird experience watching him come in, and like I said, I smelled the smell.
No, of course, but I mean, if someone enters circle with you and they're not right, you know it like that. You'll absolutely know it like that. And so, I mean, the fact that this is happening to you in a chat room tells you that the qualitative nature of cyberspace is, and I have not been able to find any differentiation between where it breaks with the astral. I think cyberspace and the astral are roughly the same thing, and I've been searching for a way to be able to differentiate them, and I don't think I have one.
It's all electrons in motion.
Well, it's all information or being in motion. I mean, electrons are a carrier. I mean, they're the physical level of that, all right? But what's actually transpiring is there's some sort of transfer of being, of knowing, all right, of simultaneous being.
Right.
And that is the part that I find singular.
Do you think, I have my biases on this question, but please hold forth. Do you think that the current forms of religion, as we understand them, will survive in the cyberspace era? Why or why not?
I don't think they've survived pre-cyberspace era.
They've taken a real bad beating for 500 years now. But do you think this will be the death of them? Do you think that theologically they have the capability
I'm going to
to
have
flex
to,
make
well,
the
but I'm going to have to
transmission?
bounce back. If the aeon began in 1904, all right, with the transmission of the Book of the Law, which we can argue about, but I'd say it's roughly correct. All right, then what that says is that every man and every woman is a star, so there's no place for organized religion. All right, in my tradition, every man and every woman is high priest and high priestess, right? That's one of the secrets, you know. And as my friends say, yeah, to protect the mysteries, reveal them daily. All right. So if it's true that everyone is their own high priestess, all right, then where's the spot for an organized religion?
Right.
Okay, I don't believe in organized religion. I'm a pagan, right?
That's right. I don't belong to any organized party. I'm a Democrat.
That's right.
Right.
So I don't know.
There's an argument that says that this tradition has also existed within Judaism, which is how they survived the diaspora, was by basically ordaining each boy at the age of 13, making sure he had what he needed to act as priest in his own home.
So you mean this became the bar mitzvah?
Right.
Okay.
And what it certifies when a boy is bar mitzvah is that he has the knowledge to lead
Son
his
of the
family.
law. Right. Right.
And to act as priest where there is no priest.
Right.
And any 10 Jewish men together, you know, it's just like a circle. You have to have a minion and you can have a ritual.
Right.
And they
and there is a lot of
line.
natural magic encoded in Judaism,
Absolutely,
whether the Jews
Kabbalah.
admit it or not.
Yes.
There's a lot of natural magic encoded. Yeah, come on, you have to. It's transmitted by the woman, and there's a whole bunch of stuff about Judaism which is extremely old,
Right.
more or less pagan, whether or not we want to consider it that or not.
And there's a lot of things about Catholicism which are pagan, which is pagan too, but
Yes, being raised a Catholic, but I was raised a suburban Catholic, so I didn't get any of that. Because at least in New England, Catholics are practically the same as Protestants.
They're almost
equally dour.
Episcopalian. Yeah.
Almost Episcopalian, exactly, and it's very dour. Whereas, you know, I see things such as the things that go on perhaps in Brazil, and
The heavy Marian influence isn't there.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So my feeling about this, my sense about it, is that the Christianity in particular has had a hard time wrapping itself around basically the whole scientific revolution since the Renaissance.
Right.
It has required it to change, to adapt.
Right.
At an increasing pace. You know, the cycle of change is up,
Yeah.
and it's having a harder and harder time adapting to the new paradigms. And I think
But
one of the
how do you
main
fit
things
Teilhard into that, though? Because Teilhard did actually do a reconciliation between the two.
he did for his time, but now the technology keeps moving forward, and these reconciliations continue to be made and made and made and made and made.
I think
I mean,
Teilhard is actually, we haven't quite come into the Teilhardian age, I think. We haven't, because we're just seeing the formation of the physical body of the noosphere. Whether it existed in an astral sense before is something of a question. I don't know if an astral body can exist without a physical body.
Are you arguing that Christianity may survive and evolve into that? I mean, I know Matthew Fox would like to see it happen too.
I like
Some
Matthew a
thoughts
great
about that.
deal. What I think will happen is I think we'll actually see the breach between the craft traditions and the Christian traditions healed in the next generation.
You think?
I think so. It's time.
Yes, it is time.
All right.
And through the work of people like Matthew Fox. And,
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
It will come to
No,
happen.
I think it's time, and I think that the craft traditions will be seen as being more vital in some respects.
Yes.
So that in a lot of respects, I think Christian traditions will come to them for safety,
Yes.
for
Yes.
protection. And so the craft traditions will inherit the Christian tradition of love, which is something that is taught in craft, but the craft is not particularly fourth chakra centered, it's third chakra centered. It's very very willful. And I think that
And Christianity, of course, minimizes will, so it's very therapeutic for those of us who are raised with that paradigm
Right.
to work on will and build it up.
Exactly. And so I think there's a complement there. And I mean, the yogis who brought the form of yoga to America that I practice, which is Kundalini, I have said very clearly the planet's making a transition between third and fourth chakra basis. All right, and that the entire planetary fourth chakra is opening now. And so that would be roughly analogous to saying that the craft tradition and the Christian traditions would become synonymous.
One of the things that I see Christianity hanging up on, and Judaism and Islam, especially Islam, is this unwavering belief in one unchanging eternal God, which is not the
Tao.
kind. It's not a tool that helps you cope with change. I mean, there's a lot that kind of congeals around this unyielding thing
Right.
that does not make for easy coping with change.
Yeah, but you know,
And
that's
we are in a place-
idolatry.
We're in a place of accelerating change, and I
Right.
think that any religion that's going to succeed is going to give people very useful tools for dealing with change, teaching them to embrace it, to work with it, to ride it.
Right.
You're
Right.
right. Tao is a wonderful example of a hybrid.
Right, but I
Science.
also think, and I actually just read a piece on this. I think that the Abrahamic religions are actually quite idolatrous, even though they deny this. In fact, this is the tension there, that they deny it while they're embracing it. Because the concept of you really being able to pin down God to exactitude on how he or she behaves is, I think, the height of arrogance. Especially when you're trying to tell other people this. And now, if you're telling it for yourself, that's fine. But if you're telling it to other people, that's the height of arrogance.
Yeah.
All right. So, in fact, if you're going to listen to what someone else is telling you about God without bothering to check it for yourself, you know, and the craft is very much about gnosis, right? Craft is about the direct experience of the sacred.
Right.
All right. As is esoteric Christianity, Pentecostalism. I've spent
Yes.
time as a Pentecostal.
I have too.
All right. All that's based on direct experience, so you can't really be lied to the same way.
Right.
Because it's either going to be there or it's not.
I
Of course,
think-
I was 32 before I found out the Holy Spirit was female. But, you know, this is something they didn't tell us in Pentecostal because it just wouldn't fit with the paradigm, right? It's like there was no woman in there. So, I think that's the basic error of the Abrahamic tree, is that it's based on people telling you what's what. Now, pre-1904, supposedly that was the way things worked. Power came from an authority, the Pope, the Pharaoh, whatever, down to the masses. All right, and that's the way it was in the Aeon of
And people accepted that. It
Aeon of
created
Osiris.
security, safety, order, all the things that people
It's
needed
just the
for
way the
survival.
power flew, right? Exactly. Supposedly that was the wiring under the board at that point. Right? This is what I've been taught. After 1904, forget it. It's up to you, and it's up to you to actually be able to do it.
Have you participated in actual ritual online?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Did you not read the Wired piece?
I have read the Wired piece.
Okay, so that was an example of the cyber sound was
How
a
did that
ritual.
work? Talk about that.
All right. Let's see. All through 1994, I had been working on the development and sort of the evangelism of this thing that we now call VRML, which was really a long-term project of mine. I've been at it for 5 years now, and it was just starting to take off. And I really wanted to do something which could create, in some sense, a place for sacred beings. See, I had read my Mircea Eliade, and I had come to understand that unless we created a place for sacred being, there was no way that cyberspace could be a place fit for humanity. All right.
Absolutely. It does not become a human culture until we establish a religion in it.
Exactly, or at least establish a place for me to feel sacred. All right. That's the necessary prerequisite. Okay.
To experience divinity.
To experience divinity in yourself, and as an essence of you being able to inhabit this space, okay, invest it with any sense of yourself. All right. So I knew that was going to be our starting point. So I said, okay, well, how do we do this? All right. And I started to think, well, okay, we've got Samhain coming up, so we can do a Samhain ritual. All right. And then I started to think, well, of course, I've been saying that cyberspace is the same thing as the shadow realm. It's the same thing as the astral. Okay. I said, all right,
Oh
why
my
don't
God,
we do?
it's fairy.
Yeah. Well, oh, no, it is. Cyberspace is fairy. The same thing. All right. And so, okay, so let's do something that actually acts as a demonstration of the truth of this, the obvious truth of this. So what we did is we created a ritual, all right, and we named the god who was passing from this realm, the physical, into the shadow realm, all right. So we picked a name for him. I said Hermes, because the god of communication, all right. Kybernetes, which is the root of cybernetics, and it means the steersman, he who guides, he who governs.
Wonderful.
All right.
Beautiful.
But govern in the strict sense of someone who monitors and changes, not in the sense of power. Okay.
What is the name?
Hermes Kybernetes.
Hermes Kybernetes.
Kybernetes,
Kybernetes.
which is the root of the word cyber. Okay, and cybernetics is the root, that's the word that Wiener used when he was developing the field of cybernetics. And said, okay, we have a god figure. Now, of course, we don't need a goddess figure because, well, A, because Samhain is a solar holiday, and B, because she's everything else. Right? It's as if the body of Nuit is the body of cyberspace. We didn't really need that. Okay, we said, okay.
Oh, come on, that's the argument men have been using for years to keep, the church is the woman. Jesus is the, we worship Jesus, but the church is the woman. Yeah.
No.
Thanks, Mark.
There was no way to do her justice. There was absolutely no way to do her justice. The work that I'm working on now is the right way to do her justice, and I just didn't know. I don't believe in half-hearted attempts. So then what we did is I took from my tradition the layout and the sense of the way the watchtowers would work, and created the VRML model for this whole thing. Okay, let me show it to you on the computer. And said, okay, so we have an altar, we have our 4 watchtowers. Celtic is a little bit different because air goes in the north in the Celtic traditions.
Right.
I don't know if it does it go?
Fairy goes east. Air goes east and fairy.
It doesn't work for me. It just doesn't work for me. Well, we can have a discussion about why I think that's one of the incorrect things that slip down through time, so it can be corrected later on. And
Yes, but is air a sword or a wand?
I think it's a sword, because fire is generally, at least at Crowley, it's a
Right.
wand.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure about that. I'm not so worried about those correspondences, but where they go. I just cannot do Earth in the North. It just does not work for me. So we created this model, and what I did is I got several of my friends that I work with magically and said, okay, let's all do this ritual. All right. And what we're going to do is, I didn't want to top down it, because this ritual is about creating order from chaos, or creating order from the firmament. So I want every one of you to write your rituals. All I ask is that it rhyme. Okay, and here's your particular watchtower. So Scott did water, James did earth, Owen did air, and Ford did fire. And I was doing HP. Okay, and Marina was Tony Parisi, was a person who developed VRML with me. Marina did HPS, beautifully naked, painted from head to toe. She's gorgeous. And so we all did our own portion of the ritual, and the beautiful thing was that this amazing ritual worked its way out of this collaborative effort. And so what we did is we published all the ritual online, and because it's a VRML world, I can link any item in the VRML world. So I linked each of the watchtowers to the ritual for the watchtower, linked the ground to the grounding part, the altar to whatever. All right, so you actually had this complete communion between the HTML world and the VRML world. So anyone who could also come in, because we did an internet call, anyone else could also come in and participate and do the ritual simultaneous with us being able to do the ritual. Plus we did an open call for submissions that would be posted into all the stuff we were doing on the website. All right. So August 27th rolls around. August 27th, 1994 was coincidentally, and we did not plan this, the 25th anniversary of when they flipped the switch on the internet. To the day.
No
All right.
kidding.
No kidding. No kidding. All right. Absolutely unaware of this. All right. So on October 27th, we're at Joe's Digital Diner, and it's like 70 people, almost all of whom are mundanes, which is an interesting situation to be in. I don't want to ever have to drag that many people into hyperspace again. I mean, I did it, and I think it's probably the only time I'll be allowed that much luxury of that much power. And as I was casting, and there was a specific wand that had come to me and said, you're going to use me to cast. It was a wand that I was familiar with. It was owned by one of my friends, or I shouldn't say owned, it was used. It was in the care of one of my friends, and the wand said, you're going to use me for this. And as I cast, I could see the rent in space-time. It was literally that simple. And I brought 70 people who knew nothing about witchcraft into magical space with us. We did, I should say, all right? And we did an evenings full of ritual, with this sense that what we were doing in physical space is also being echoed in cyberspace. Okay. Now the idea was that ritual site that we'd set up was going to exist at the 000 inside of cyberspace. All right. In other words, the sacred would be that which ontologically founded the world. Okay. In the sense that that circle is the essence of all things divine in humanity.
Wow.
Okay. So that was the essence behind it. It was funny because Eric Davis is a friend of ours, and at the same time he wrote the article for Wired, which we didn't really, I don't think we really expected was going to be quite as big a deal as it turned out to be, and we certainly didn't do it for that. We just did it because we thought it was going to be really cool. And the folks at Joe's Digital Diner thought they were going to get someone talking about Rommel for the evening. Instead, they got an evening of witchcraft, which they actually really loved. Okay, the people who were there who were into it were wonderful, and in my tradition, you cast the circle and then you invite everyone in.
Right.
Some
absolutely.
people did
Cast
not.
it, clean it, invite everybody in.
Yeah.
Right.
Some people did not come in. Some people knew that they had to leave right then.
Yeah.
And they left. All right. The other 70 people had a very good time with it.
Wow.
So.
That's great.
So it was an incredible evening, and it was an incredible evening of celebrating the sacred in cyberspace, which is something I think we have to do more often. And so part of what I do is think about ways that I want to continue to do that.
Question that comes up among mundanes when you bring them face to face with the idea of a new religion for cyberspace, is who will be the clergy? Who will control the paradigm? Who will write the mythologies?
Yes.
They want assurances that there won't be, God forbid, a Rasputin emerge.
Or Jim Jones.
Or Jim Jones, exactly.
Yeah, but I got to bring it back. Unless you're your own high priest, you ain't going to be functioning correct in the 21st century.
Right. And this is the same problem paganism has explaining itself to the world. That we're not following gurus around, we are our own gurus.
That's right. That's right. There are teachers, certainly, but they're recognized for their authority. But if you follow a teacher blindly, well, it's your mistake.
Yeah. And what it does is give us easy access to people who can articulate ideas. I mean, basically, Jesus and Muhammad and these guys were popularizers of ideas that were already in currency in their place and time. Most of what they said was not particularly new, but they were able to articulate it and present it in a way that made sense to the people in their time and place. These people will emerge, I have no doubt, on cyberspace. You may be one of them who could articulate these new ideas. You give them make them digestible, make them understandable, and liberate a lot of minds and souls in the process.
No, you got to liberate yourself. there's you know.
Okay, lead others to be liberated then.
Okay. Yeah.
Shine the light in their eyes and kind of make them see.
Sometimes people just go, oh. So
that's not your problem.
No, exactly, and therein is wisdom, is knowing that that's not your problem. But I mean, I can't see any future for any sort of spirituality in cyberspace that is not centered on the individual. I cannot see it. I cannot see how it would work. And the entire nature of what the internet is individual. And I mean, this is why this entire issue, just, you know, may not be relatively current by the time this video comes out, of the German government banning the alt.sex blah binaries.
Which now they say they didn't.
News groups, yeah, right.
What? Which?
Oh, you haven't heard about this?
CompuServe.
Yeah, CompuServe with the German government.
War on words. War on words.
No, it's bullshit. It won't work anyway. Just hit a new server outside of Germany. It's the internet. It's everywhere, right? It's hyperspace. Every point's directly connected to everything else. All you have to do is point your news server at a machine that may be in America or in France or in Sweden or in
They're
Finland.
not gonna keep the Germans
But very
from getting
soon,
whatever
every
they want.
operator of a server will abide the law, and it's going to be
Not in
common-
Amsterdam, they won't.
Exactly in Amsterdam, they will.
No, I doubt it.
Access
Philippe and I have been talking about this. I don't think
Access
that's
for
going to
All
happen.
was the first to pull the child porn stuff off. The first in the world to pull it off. So what they say and what they do is different. Yes?
Well, then it'll be in Antigua or Cayman Islands or Bahamas. It doesn't matter.
As long as it's there
Information is
somewhere.
anational now.
Yeah, but money is international. And if enough pressure is put out to companies operating servers and operating services, they will go for it. I mean, I don't think it can be stopped. What I think is actually that we need to regulate it, that we need to re-establish levels of security and privacy for private mail and listings and postings and stuff like that.
We need a postmark system.
Something like, you know, first class mail, second class mail, stuff like
We
that.
need a postmark system in the sense that things are date stamped, time stamped, that somebody has certified that this is private until it gets to where it's going.
Yes.
It
And
includes
accountability
encryption.
checks.
It includes accountability. It includes encryption. It includes the fact that if you send a piece of mail to your attorney or to somebody you're suing, they can't tamper with the email. You know, it becomes official documents can be transmitted, tamper-proof. There are all kinds of things that need to happen, but they all have to do
So why
with
don't
what the
they
post
happen?
office gives us with the assurance of a postmark.
Why doesn't that happen?
Because they're still too hard to use right now. You can do all of that with PGP right now, but PGP is still too hard for most people to use.
Yeah, you know,
And
but why
and
doesn't
it's illegal.
it happen on a business level? Why don't the providers get together or you know, talk to the politicians and get this happening? Because what we see now is like Exxon kind of laws that
Exxon,
are driven by
Exxon.
some fundamentalist groups.
Who don't really understand the technology, and they can pass those laws, but they've
That
been left so
doesn't
far
change anything.
behind that they don't even know how far behind they've been left.
So what to do about it?
Ignore them.
Well-
in time they'll go
no,
away.
no.
Part of what I'm looking forward to is the fact that I think that any of these laws will actually drive the use of encryption way up.
Yeah.
I'm a very big fan of encryption in order to protect people from information that they don't want to see. But there's a second factor here. One of it's what we call zoning. We zone the physical world in a very realistic way. In fact, Amsterdam is the perfect example of this, to provide areas where certain things are permitted and certain things aren't in other areas. All right. So
If you don't like it, don't go there.
Yeah. If you have your dirty bookstore in cyberspace, we'll put it in the area that's zoned for adult content. Don't let the kids get in there. And there are ways to effectively make that happen. And if you are in there, that is an implicit statement that you are acknowledging what's going on in there. That's how we do it. That's how reasonable adults do it in the real world. If we don't have that, then we are, in essence, saying that we have to have the cultural level of a 12-year-old on the
Right.
entire internet, which is unacceptable.
Yeah.
It's I mean, some of the writings that are up at my site would be unacceptable for precisely that reason.
Yeah, and it's
So
going to come
why
actually,
is
this
nobody
ties-
really doing anything about it. EFF yesterday, there was this party, and I don't think Barlow did anything else than chatting with Leary for 2 minutes on the net, and he didn't say anything. So why is this? Because they've joined the other side or something?
I won't say anything about that on videotape.
Now, it feels like the people that at one time were the greatest hackers fighting the establishment have now changed sides.
Some of them.
And
Barlow was never a great hacker, he was a great popularizer.
Well, I'm not only talking about Barlow, I'm talking about the people in Amsterdam who are really like the, what they call themselves, techno-anarchists of the world, and have now gone in business, and are in fact worse than the commercial.
Luke, you're a businessman, you know what money does to people.
It's, I mean, I think that's a little bit too quick an answer to it. I think that what you're going to see is in an ecology, every niche gets filled. We haven't seen the explosion of niches yet. In fact, that's what's happening over the next 3 years is where the niches explode, so that we will find the niche for people who need to be able to distribute alt.6.binaries or need to be able to read alt.6.binaries. That's going to happen. So what you have to do is you have to look for that ecology to expand, because the ecology will happen. And if people like Access for All don't want to carry it, that won't matter, because there'll be some other firm in Amsterdam or in Belize or in the Cayman Islands or in Antigua who will carry it, because there's going to be money in it. All right. Certainly, Playboy.com is getting, what, 500,000 hits a day right now.
Yeah, fine, but it's a commercial. Don't you think there is...
It's also dirty.
Well, it depends on where you come from.
Right, well, but I mean, just in sort of the general sense of, do you want a 6-year-old to see it? No.
This also, you touched on something and kind of grazed off of it, that also may become a problem for pagans, in that the nature of our religion, more so than most, is intensely erotic and intensely sexual. And there's a lot that is part of our ritual and part of our talk that deals with that.
Right.
And it's not pornography in the sense that our Western culture understands pornography, or it is, but it's
but that's
it's part of our culture. And how do it becomes a tool that they can use to beat up on us. And there's
Victor Anderson, he did all that like slapping of the butt stuff, right? Isn't that part of that tradition? Yeah, I know you can't talk about it. I remember that there are various little peccadillos that each of the modern traditions have, and I remember that's connected with the fairy tradition. So you're right. The other traditions aren't necessarily quite so strong in that particular aspect.
Actually, the Gardnerians are the ones I heard with a big scourger.
Everyone's pointing at everyone else.
That's the dirt I heard.
Hey, what I want to ask is...
I heard Gardner was just really into these English boys' school stuff.
That's it, yeah, okay.
Isn't there a place for regulation? Where the government or some kind of body takes over and says, we're going to regulate this whole thing.
All right, but here's my next question then. How do you answer John Gilmore's, I think, perfectly true assumption or statement that the Internet regards censorship as a network failure and routes around it?
Yeah, but still, we all have to abide by the laws of money, you know, and copyright and stuff like that. And we can say we don't, but then...
Chinese don't.
Yeah, and see where it brought them. You know, now that they're more or less abiding, the business goes up. I'm just saying, we can say that the government and the CIA and whatever are bad boys, but someone has to regulate this stuff. Otherwise, Yahoo and all the search engines very soon will be not directing you to the real truth or the real facts, but they will be directing you to the Ziff Davis publications or subsites that they like you to see.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then someone else will create the pagan web server, Pagan Seek.
Yeah, but so you get a new proliferation of
There'll be an ecology.
Like
There'll be an ecology like that. Yeah, that's true. There are.
When you say ecology, you mean like a natural evolving.
People will fill these niches.
Yeah.
Where the information is needed, people will supply it.
Processes in people, because there'll be a demand for it. And I think wherever there's demand, the people will rise to meet those demands.
Question: online altars.
Pardon me?
Online altars. I understand Owen has had some experience with this.
Online altars.
Are people building altars online?
Well, define what you mean by an altar, because part of what the cyber salon was a circle with an altar in it.
Right. What was on that altar?
A cup and a sword. That was it. We kept it very simple because we had to keep the polygon budget down. But a cup and a sword.
You ever been to the spiral dance?
Site?
Been to the spiral? No, the actual physical spiral dance.
I didn't know there was ever just like sort of one. I'm sorry.
Reclaiming throws a spiral dance every year.
Oh, okay. No, I haven't been to it.
And it's been they have 2,000 people turn out. It's
Right.
probably the single biggest pagan event certainly in San Francisco, if not the country.
Okay.
In the course of a year. I've gone for years. And one of the things that they do is they have altars set up, tables, and people bring things, especially for the North Altar.
Okay.
And by the time you've got 2,000 people with all
Right.
their pictures of their dead relatives and
Right.
their pomegranates and their this and
Right.
that and the other thing, you
Right.
have got a thing,
Right.
candles built to the sky.
Right.
And they are wild and wonderful.
Right.
And the wonder of them, it comes from the collective expression
Right.
of a little piece of everybody's heart is sitting there on that altar.
Right. Okay, now I've got exactly what you mean.
Okay.
All right. Has anything like this been built online? Yes and no. I know Owen is doing some stuff like this. We're doing something like this where all the offerings will be sound. Okay. This is a piece that we're working on, which is the only thing that I could think of to actually encompass any worship of goddess. In fact, we're going to be announcing it at Beltane. Nothing like timing. And which is called the World Song. We'll basically be able to take a map of the world, or pardon me, a 3D map of the world, an image of the world, all right, and say, I'm here, and this is my sound. This is the offering of my community, myself, whatever, all right, as an offering into the database. You send it into the database, and then people will be able to tour through the database in real time in 3D and listen to the sound of these communities or these people or whatever, making their own offering, okay? So in that sense, it's a sonic altar, all right, rather than something that's more physical, which is well suited to cyberspace because it's not tangible. So it's a medium that is well suited to that. That's my idea. That's my vision of what an altar can be like in cyberspace. Okay, we had some elements of the cyber sound where we asked people for contributions and literally put them in the pages at the various altars. So we did that as well.
Exactly.
Okay, I don't know if there have been other larger examples of that or not.
Okay, talking about marking the cycles of life, birth, death, marriage, the changes that one of the things that religion does is help us mark the transitions.
Right.
And meals, things, the gathering of clan, all the things that bind us as humans.
Right.
How are we going to still respond to those kinds of things, or are there going to be other experiences around which our rituals could jam?
Well, I think that as long as we're in human bodies, we're clearly going to respond to the cycle of the seasons and the tide of time. All right, because that's where, I mean, the reason we...
That is the rhythm of a human life.
That's right. That's right. I mean, I find for myself that I go very bananas around both solstices. Okay? I mean, even more bananas than I would tend to go around a moon. Okay? Because, I mean, I know you can tell witches go a little bit nuts around the moon.
Yeah.
You know, which is, I'm firmly convinced this is one of the reasons why they have ritual, because it's the only way they can maintain balance. It actually is an amending. It's a release of some of the energy that gets built up in OH full moon. All right. The same thing I think is equally true at the solstices. In fact, I have a much easier time at the equinoxes for some reason. There's just something about it.
I go the other way. I get real squirrely at the equinoxes.
Yeah, well, but I mean, it's the same thing. That there's something going on there, right? Or maybe that's a male-female thing.
It could be.
Because, there's a more sense of balance, I think, at the equinox, and it's sort of more extremist.
My life changes always recur right at those junctures.
Yeah.
Things rip apart March every year.
Okay, yeah. So I don't think that we're going to leave any of this real physicality of the seasons behind. Now, whether or not we'll have new rituals based on having a site set up or something like this. For instance, when I tell people when they finally get their own homepage, I tell them the first thing they should do is put an invocation in it for the first 3 days. All right, write up an invocation.
It's a house blessing.
It is, so that if anyone hits the site, you hit it yourself. But if anyone does, and potentially anyone can, all right, they'll get the invocation. So it's the way to open it. All right, and I say this is a very auspicious way to begin. I feel it's a very auspicious way to begin a site. So I think there'll be little rituals like that you'll see that people will use to really keep them close to why they have a site, why they're doing anything in cyberspace, and why you're doing it is, I think, to share with other people. So,
It's also kind of invests it with your energy.
Yeah.
In a way that just throwing up a web page,
Exactly.
I mean, companies do this all the time and walk away and never look at them again.
That's right. That's right.
This is a way of owning it, putting your energy, your.
Yes, exactly, and making it a representation of your sacred self.
Yes, absolutely. I think I'm running low on questions, believe it or not. I did have Willard van de Bogart, who I talked to the other night, and who Luke talked to this morning.
Earth Portal.
Right, Earth Portal. Who is an engineer at heart, and not a man of, well, he experiences sacredness in the flow of information. And the thing that he loved about it, I kept trying to talk to him about ritual, and he said, no, what I want to talk about is the information, because that for me is what's sacred. is the sense that I'm connecting with people all over the earth.
Right.
That I'm sharing consciousness with them.
Right.
What happens inside my own head when those heads start connecting is to me what the spiritual experience is.
Right. Whose head? My own head. Who's my own head? So yeah, I'm starting to get very blurry about that line. I have a feeling that in another generation or anyway, the word my is not going to be as in common use as it is now. The word I or my are not going to be in nearly as common use, and they're going to have a slightly different meaning.
I think we're evolving toward a more collective consciousness.
I don't know if collective is the right word to use, but it's the closest one we've got right now.
Okay.
All right. Transcendent ego maybe is the best way to think of that.
Okay.
All right. In
I like
the
that.
Eastern sense of what ego is.
I like that.
Yeah.
Are you aware of healings,
Mm.
bondings, ritual, prayer?
Prayer, yes. Done that.
Done that. I have
Um,
too. Just
Yeah.
tell me your tale.
Well, much more. It was interesting last year. I'll come back here. Pagan history begins, at least modern pagan history begins on January 1st, 1995, by Julian calendar, by vulgar calendar. All right, for some reason that I don't know why. I just know it is. All right, but it's definably true because the new moon was synonymous with the Julian New Year last year.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So it was very easy to start counting time correctly, as in, oh, well, your clocks are synchronized. So I've given you the benefit of having your Julian and your pagan clock synchronized. Okay, let's see. And also, if you want to take a look at the concurrence of the new moons on Beltane, I think the new moon, no,
There were a lot of them last year.
Full moon on Samhain, and Yule being the end of the year, also simultaneously being a new moon.
Right.
All right. All right. I mean, the calendar was too precisely aligned last year for it to be just something I would say, oh, this is coincidental. Yeah, okay. All right. So I'm taking that as year 0. All right, the beginning of time. So we're now in year 1.
Of pagan time.
Of pagan time. All right. Of at least modern pagan time, right? MPT. There you go. Modern pagan time. Okay. After that 2,000 year lapse into whatever that was.
We're back on track now.
All right. Well, we're back. Yeah, we're back now. Okay. And I'm trying to think. What was the question again? There was a preamble.
Prayer.
That's right. Okay. So what would happen is every time the moon went new, okay, I think 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 moon. All right. For the first n number of days, generally corresponding to the number of the moon, I would write up a poem/prayer for my friends. In some ways, riffing off of sort of the Book of Lies, where each number has a particular poem that's been written about it, and right, which has to do with sort of the cardinal nature of the number. Okay, and so I'd do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for the 6 moon, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 for the 7 moon. All right, and these were also, they were not just prayers, they were not poems, they were prayers, and they would generally, I would just sit down, and sometimes I'd be able to do them, and sometimes I wouldn't. But if I would, they'd be out in 2 minutes, and they would just be there, and they'd be ready to be sent. All right, so I now have the sort of like book of prayers that talk about different aspects of being, or divine being, or the essence of a number. 7 was the chariot, so there's a lot of this and that. Okay, being pulled by 2 horses. That's implicit in a lot of the poems.
Tension of the, yeah.
Right, or implicit in a lot of the prayers. And so that to me, that was just a wonderful thing that happened totally by itself last year in terms of prayer for that. All right.
A prayer for others, healing.
That's really very interesting because I don't think I've used cyberspace so much to send it. I have a bit, but I've used it to receive the fact that people need it. And then I've just used the normal astral channels to send it.
Right.
Because you don't really need to send it in email if you can just sort of send the energy over the astral.
I was had an interesting experience again in the AOL religion room. This was probably 6 months ago. And again, the usual suspects of all flavors, and the Christians were beating up on the pagans and vice versa. And this guy comes in.
The pagans beating up on the Christians,
Yeah.
it's too easy.
And he's a Presbyterian from Ohio. This guy just comes in and he says, I need to talk to somebody. I just got diagnosed with cancer, and I have less than 2 years to live.
Ooh.
And watching all the people respond from their own religious traditions, it was a wonderful, as the Christians would say, witness to the Christians. Watching the pagans, gather, we built a little circle around him, and we started, sending our energy through our astral channels.
Right.
And they were doing the same on their end. And watching the different ways that we did it, the different mechanics. Online, all going by, scrolling right by. And yet, the awareness, the common awareness, we talked about this later, that what we had done was essentially a similar kind of thing in terms of raising and channeling, sending energy.
Yes.
Although we talk about it in
Yes,
very
although
different
you'll
ways.
own it.
Willard,
they won't.
that you spoke with this morning, was in hospital, and Wes Thomas asked the world, I mean, he has his own word, about praying for this guy or sending
Mhm.
wishes, and I've done it many times. I mean, there's people that just request a little help, and I do that.
It's like you help build a world consensus that this person needs to stick around.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not judging whether it's good or bad. It's someone asked for it, and that's fine.
Or not. I mean,
Or
you
not.
just, you know, you say that this.
I've known real crumbs who suddenly just sort of went away.
Yeah.
You got to wonder, you know, if there's like
Well, it's okay. I don't
somewhere in
even,
the collective unconscious,
there is that. Yeah, being
there's a consensus.
taken out of gameplay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Foul. It's your third foul. You're out of the game.
Yeah, there's structure out.
So you must forgive once. You must forgive twice. You need not forgive thrice. It's part of the read. And so I think sometimes people pass their 3 strikes limit. But I mean, in that sense, you can ask someone to be healed from cancer, but that may also not be the way of
Right,
things.
absolutely.
And so, in which case, you have to relationship with the crystals and the chakras. This enormous document might have been 80K. Pours into my email mailbox, and the person apologized because I wasn't supposed to get it. He didn't know how I ended up on his list.
That happens. You
Yes,
get stuff
no kidding,
all the
that
time.
happens. I was like,
Okay,
well, thank
now
you, I
there's
liked
a
it.
more practical thing, the law of 3.
Yes.
I found that people that, you know, everybody has a homepage these days.
Mhm.
And nobody looks at your homepage. But at the moment, hey, if you have 60 million homepages, nobody's going to look, yeah?
Right.
But that people that start looking at other homepages, they get at least the same amount of visitors or
Mhm.
a multiple of that. Is that something you noticed?
It's you see, it's where I don't know. I visit a lot of homepages. I visited your homepage. I visit a lot of homepages. I guess I know I get a lot of visitors to my homepage. So I don't know if that's the way
There's
that
a
really works
correlation.
or not.
Yeah.
Well, I
don't
found a
know.
correlation, and I think that because cyberspace is relatively new,
Mhm.
that those esoteric laws apply better because it's a new thing. It's like it's unspoiled.
On a real mundane level, it could just be that people who visit a lot of homepages know how to put them together.
Yeah, yeah, that's also
That's
true.
another
That's
explanation.
also true.
Right.
Although I mean, I do think that the threefold law applies in some